Hello. Today I'm taking a look at a popular American Chardonnay. This is Bogle Family Vineyards Chardonnay from 2021. Now, Bogle are one of the 15th largest wineries in California. They produce over 1 million cases of wine a year, and for them Chardonnay is their biggest and most important brand in terms of volume. The company was founded in 1968 when Warren Bogle and his son Chris, who were farmers working in Clarksburg, which is in the Sacramento Delta, so slightly inland from San Francisco, decided to plant 20 acres of vines as a sort of a side project. 11 years later, in 1979, they started their own winery, and through the 90s they were actually really successful at promoting and growing their brand. So today the company is still family owned, and they farm over 1,500 hectares of estate vineyards and also buy in some fruit as well. The majority of their vineyards are in the regions of the Sacramento Delta in California, and also some in Central Valley, although they do take fruit from other locations as well, as we'll see. This particular wine notes that it's certified as green, and that's a sustainable viticulture certification that it has on the label there. It also notes that it's vegan and gluten-free. So the fruit for this wine comes from 3 locations. Those are Clarksburg, where the family have their home, and that's where their main production centre is. Clarksburg is to the southwest of Sacramento, in that Delta area there. Fruit is also sourced from the Dunnigan Hills, which is slightly to the northwest of Sacramento. Both these regions are cooled by cool air coming up from the San Francisco Bay of an evening. Preserve freshness, that helps to preserve fresh acidity in the grapes as they ripen. The third fruit source used for this wine is the coastal area of Monterey, where the Monterey Valley is cooled quite substantially every evening by winds coming in off the sea. So we have 3 regions, each of which has their own AVA, but actually being blended to combine the different characteristics that each provides to make a wine that's a consistent blend, presumably from vintage to vintage. So Clarksburg, where the Bogle family first planted vines, is an area with fertile, quite wet soils that gives quite high yields of fruit. And in 2021 they believe that added a sort of a green apple and pear note to the flavours of the wine. The Dunnigan Hills, on the other hand, has much more friable soils, and that tends to reduce yields substantially. It's also a warmer area, tending to produce more full-bodied whites and rich reds. Monterey, as I say, tends to be a cool region that adds crispness that should add a little life and freshness to the wine. I have no notes to tell me anything about the harvest here, but I would make the assumption that the majority of this, if not all of it, is machine picked. That this is a wine made to a price point. I wouldn't suspect much of this fruit was hand picked at all. Half the wine fermented in new American oak barrels, and the remainder was fermented in temperature controlled stainless steel tanks. Again, I would make an assumption here, but given the volume of this wine that's made, is that it's almost certain that the fermentation will have been started in tank and the wine will then have been run into barrel. This is not a sort of a small Burgundy domain where you can allow every barrel to start fermenting with its own natural yeasts. I would imagine that with production on this scale, you need to make sure that the wine's fermenting with your selected yeast strain. You won't be wanting to take risks in the winery of that sort. The wine then aged for 8 months in barrel, all of it in new American oak. And American oak tends to be more flavoursome than French oak, largely because it tends to be sawn and kiln dried, and so that leaves much more of the sort of the obvious vanilla flavours, the sort of flavours you get in bourbon, in fact, in a lot of cases. So I'm expecting there's going to be quite an obvious rich oak note. So the wine aged in barrel for 8 months, and during this time it aged with the lees left in the wine, and these were stirred up once a month by hand. So somebody going around and agitating the yeast to get it back into suspension. And what keeping these yeast particles in suspension will do is it'll prevent the wine from oxidizing. It protects it from that, and it will give it a richness as the yeasts break down. They'll add a sort of a creamy nature to the flavour. I also don't have a note, but I would assume that the majority of this wine goes through malolactic conversion as well, just to build on that rich flavour. But let's have a look and see, shall we? So the first thing to say is there is a relatively deep, sort of medium to deep yellow colour there. It's a lovely vibrancy. The wine has 14.5% alcohol, and it's notable that as I swirl it, it clings to the glass and it's producing some quite prominent tears on the side there. The aromas are powerful. The power is coming in a number of ways. You have a very clean oak note coming from behind the fruit. There's vanilla and cedar, but they're having to push their way through quite a ripe fruit. It almost starts off pineapple-y, but becomes much more sort of ripe peach, nectarine. There's a very ripe stone fruit note there. And then layered over the top of that, there are sort of creamy notes, perhaps a touch of butterscotch as well. So notes pointing towards lees aging and malolactic conversion. So we've seen the barrel aged notes, we've seen ripe fruit, we've seen the malolactic conversion and the lees aging notes come through there. So all factors that I would reckon would be key to the style of a branded California Chardonnay. So let's have a taste, shall we? The wine is dry and rich. To the front of the mouth, straightway there's toastiness, there's cedariness, there's plentiful vanilla notes absolutely oozing onto the palate there. But they're actually very well integrated, and barrel fermentation has allowed that to happen. And they're integrated with those creamy leesy notes, the butterscotch notes, the diacetyl that's come from that malolactic conversion. And that's all beautifully married to this rich, very peachy, high-toned fruit. In fact, there's almost a sort of a note like the sort of the richness of the peach closest to the stone, sort of at the back palate there. The wine is quite full-bodied. The alcohol is giving it roundness. The acidity is at best balanced. The fruit is being kept lively by the acidity, but there isn't a sort of a long mineral note to the finish of the acidity. Isn't giving it enormous length. It's the weight of the fruit that's giving the wine any length. If there is that, it's that sort of stone fruit notes are carrying on, rich, ripe stone fruit. I guess actually it's notable that what I saw as pineapple on the nose initially isn't coming through on the palate, and if it was, pineapple has that acidity, and I'm not seeing it there. I think this is a completely amenable California Chardonnay. It's the sort of style that many people will really not enjoy, because it's not trying to be an elegant wine at all. It's powerful, it's punchy, it's got this rounded, rich, ripe fruit that's all very well integrated. The barrel fermentation and the barrel aging has got it all beautifully knit there. There's intensity of flavour. The flavours are lasting well. The wine will probably age for 2 or 3 years quite happily. I don't think it's got the acidity for long aging, and I think actually that its sort of powerful primary fruit is probably its main attribute, so you'd want to drink it relatively young. But if, like me, occasionally you enjoy the guilty pleasure of this sort of rich, ripe, hedonistic style of California Chardonnay, I think this is a completely palatable, enjoyable wine made very carefully to achieve this style, and seriously, it's done what it set out to achieve. Perhaps not a wine that's going to appeal to the lovers of elegant white burgundies, but I can see why this particular brand of Chardonnay and its style is popular with consumers. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you found the tasting of interest. If you have enjoyed it, do please press the like button. That would be fantastic. Do consider sharing the video with your friends if you think they'd be interested. Do think about signing up and following us on YouTube. It would be great to have your support. If you have any comments or feedback, please leave those in the comments box below. It would be wonderful to hear what you think about the tastings we're doing, the wines we're looking at, or anything else related to that. Most importantly, however, do please take some time and try and join us for another tasting in the very near future, won't you? Thanks again. Bye for now.